Hi, I'm JJ. Welcome or welcome back. Today I wanted to share with you a little more about blacksmithing, just so you can understand where my username comes from as the blacksmith. And I just wanted to first start talking about why or how I got into it. So during the pandemic, late in 2020, we were still isolated and stuff. And I made a list of all the things that I always wanted to try, and just I wasn't sure what people might think about them, and I was worried about the perception and stuff. And but during all that isolation and stuff, I thought, well, you know what? Who cares? I'm gonna do what I want to do, and I'm just gonna try everything that I always wanted to do. So in the meantime, I was working on a few languages and different things that I wanted to learn. I I learned to juggle. I learned to solve the Rubik's Cube. And one of the other things on my list, as soon as things opened up again, is that I wanted to try to do blacksmithing. And it was just going to be something I was going to try, like all the other stuff, something fun, like learning to play guitar. That was just going to be for me. But when I first went there, I absolutely fell in love with everything about it. I love that when you're there, it's so meditative because you have to be in the present. All the stuff outside can't follow you in there because you're working with fire, you're working with a hammer and hard objects and heavy objects, and then you're making something sharp. So you can't let your mind wander, and you just have to be fully there and fully present. And I found that to be one of my favorite things about it. In addition, it mixes and blends art and science. It blends history. The facility, the forge that I go to, they use all the old ancient techniques. They don't use a lot of the newer stuff. It's all older stuff. And so you understand the processes, you learn what they had to do. And just making a knife for the first time, it gave me so much respect for the ancient blacksmiths who had to make all the armor and the swords for these armies, and just the significance of that, and how it made me feel connected to all that history, which I like history. And in addition to understanding the science and history of it, there's this art and beauty to it because you get to design your own projects. So the first knife that I made, it was just what we all made. Everyone made a similar one. You made it your own, but we all used the same kind of steel for it and the same process. The next knife that I made was the first one I got to design myself. I got to draw it, so from scratch, drawing, coming up with what I wanted to do, and then making it. That whole process is what eventually made me absolutely fall in love with it. And then came the Damascus blade, the dagger that I already showed you, which that process is even harder because you take a lot of different length, width, colors, sizes of different steel, different metal, and you make layers. And so you start with 13 layers, about a couple inches long and very thin, and you have to melt it together. And then it's just basically for the first several classes that you're just working with a brick, because you're having to melt it and then pound it out long enough that you can cut it in half and then fold it, and then now your brick is twice as thick. So you go from 13 layers to 26 layers, and then do it again. So then my blade that I had made and showed you earlier is 52 layers. And so those layers, since it's different density and different kinds of steel and different colors, is what makes those cool designs in the blade. And that's what the Damascus dagger is famous for. So That being said, I wanted to share the projects that I already made for you and then give you a few book recommendations because this is a booktube channel. So the first one is just a cheese knife. It was just a small piece of steel, and not only did you have to forge this blade and shape it, you also had to then flatten this side so that it could be the handle. And then once it was long enough and flat enough, we had to bend it and twist it until we got the shape that we wanted. And then I chose to also stain the handle so that it's different than the blade. The next one, and this is the one that I was excited with until I finally made my Damascus dagger, but this one is basically like a chef knife. So it was the next one that we were allowed to make, but once again we could design it. So this is the first one that I drew and did it from scratch all by myself. So I drew the dagger and then I forged this blade out of it, and I also stained it because I did want the black edges around it. I had to sand it all down and shape the blade. It's quite a heavy one, and then a hole, like if it's in the kitchen, that you can hang on. It is quite sharp, so I do have to be careful. And this is the first time I learned to do the blade where instead of having I'm using wood, and this is when I found out that I really liked working with wood. So, and this one, you actually have to drill the holes in, and that was also hard because you have to figure out where, and you have to get them deep enough, and then you're basically hammering into it and stuff to get, and then once you get it deeper, then there were different kind of machinery that we could use to make them level and everything. And then the wood, I burned this wood much like my other dagger. I really liked this. This is when I realized how much I like this aspect. So it was just a light wood, and I scorched it until it got to the color that I wanted. And then you have to then sand the wood and the blade so that it's even, because you're just dealing with like a block of wood, and then you have to make it match the handle, and then also able to grip it. You need to have the right grip. So you could do grooved, so I have like grooves for my fingers. It has to be long enough to be able to hold. And then once it's all done, you have to also sand it so that it's smooth enough to actually be able to use. So this was my first, and when I actually absolutely fell in love with blacksmithing. And then the last one is the one that I currently am working on. And so this was the one I just recently finished, and now I'm working on the sword. I have not been able to go back to the forge because it's summertime and I was not going to go in that heat any longer. But I got this, speaking of how art is connected, there was a homeschool kid who also goes to that forge, and he made a bunch of these different style, basically display for it, and it's made out of an antler, deer antler. And so I bought one to display my favorite dagger. And so I had already talked much about this, but you can see the colors in the design. So this is the Damascus layered dagger that I was talking about. The holes in it were supposed to make like a effect for like a raindrop effect, and like it's really hard because you're trying to get it enough to have that go through each of the layers but not on each side, and I did make it go a little too deep, which is why you are able to see it, but it's pretty smooth on it. You can just tell a little bit more. So I do have more work to get done. I feel like it's the kind of art that you can master over a lifetime, but you learn it quickly enough that you can, you just have to keep getting better and better. So I'm at that point where now I know what I'm doing. I just have to keep perfecting and working on it. So this is the first time I tried. So this was other blocks of wood. So we had to cut a whole bunch of different blocks of wood. If you can see, if up close, you can see where they were connected. And so then instead of drilling the holes like that other knife, you have to cut the holes this way so that the other part of this is actually down here. So the handle does go through here. So you have to get the holes perfectly lined up so that you can get that in there. And then that you have to also then sand down and get it smooth so that it's you're not getting any kind of splinters or anything when you're gripping it, but also in a way that you can hold it. And so this ended up being bigger because I also designed and drew this one as well. And so since it is longer than just a regular dagger, it could almost be a short sword, just not quite. But I made it so it's almost a grip and a half, so that, you know, like if you do use it like a sword, but it's basically just a dagger. But that was my idea behind it. So those are my this knives and the daggers that I met so far. So for the book suggestions and recommendations, since I talked about how meditative this art is, I recommend the Tao Te Ching, which is by Lao Tzu. And this is actually was translated and very beautifully and lyrically by Sam Torode. And he did like Epictetus and other different translations for different philosophical books. But this is a good one. Just you know, they're just short, different ideas and passages that you can meditate on. And then for the science aspect, the Disappearing Spoon. And I actually, I marked up this book. There was so much to remember and to enjoy in this book, or not enjoy if it was talking about some bad stuff. But it actually talks about a bunch of the different elements on the periodic table, and then like how they were discovered, what they're important for, the people who discovered them, and you get a whole lot of history as well as that science part. So there was a lot of information in here about World War II and Hitler, and how he had to use some of these elements and how that it helped him, not just with the weaponry and stuff, but also with the chemical warfare. You know, and then when you're also talking about the elements used for his the gas chambers and stuff, like all that, there's a lot of stuff in here that I did not realize, even knowing that much about history and about World War II. So I found this really interesting and fascinating. It's very dense. It does take a while to read just because of how much information it is giving you. But as it talks about each story and each element, it does give you a lot of really cool back information and stuff that I found interesting. Other ones that I would suggest that have to do with science are Radium Girls. That is about how a lot of the girls went to jobs in the factory, making the dials on the watches that soldiers wore in World War One. They put the dials on so that they could glow in the dark and they would be able to tell the time and stuff. Well, they were taught that to get the paintbrush small enough to be able to write on those dials, that they were supposed to lick it every time after they used it. So they're basically inhaling this radium, which they were falsely told at the time is not only safe, but they had a lot of lies about it being used for medicinal purposes, and how it was this health tonic that they could use. And so these girls never as they started getting sicker and sicker and so many of them dying, they were flat out told that, oh, it's not the radium, it must be something else. And a lot of them were told that they had syphilis or other sexually transmitted diseases, and it was all on the girls instead of the company that was blatantly using them. And then you get to really know the story of these girls, because there was 5 of them who finally learned the truth and took the case to court, and it was their story. And it was a hard read, a good read, a necessary read, and just to know that they actually targeted young girls. They were teenagers, and the smaller the hands, the easier to color those dials. So they targeted really young girls, and a lot of immigrant girls, because they needed the work. They were getting paid well, but also being lied to and being used. So once again, a very good story. And then another one is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. And that is about how doctors used to harvest the cells of women during the surgeries without letting them know. And so Henrietta Lacks, her cells were used and are being still used for so many medicinal purposes, so many scientific advancements, all without her family getting compensated, all without nobody having heard her name or knowing what they did. And so it's a story of this woman who had found out about that and then wanted to do a report on it, and tried to interview the women in the family, and letting them know all that was done to their mom. And it was also another fascinating and very well done story. And then the last one, since blacksmithing is also art, and this one I have not read, and it's on my TBR, but I wanted to talk about it because it's about art. So it's called Icarus, and it's basically it's not quite a retelling of the myth, but it's an exploration of the myth. And so there's this he's a thief. He's an art thief, which is why I'm tying it into these art these suggestions. So I'm just really excited to read it, just because I love mythology, even if this is set modern day. It's just gonna be fun to explore the art world, to see his motivations for stealing art, to see what kind of art he steals. I do hope it talks about art in here, more than just that being the catalyst for his thievery, but we will see. And it does say there's nothing a clever thief can't steal, so I am excited to see what he does try to steal, especially having just read the Medicis and the Borgises in their funding of the Renaissance and all the artists and stuff I studied there. And there are a few art books that I've been trying to get my hands on, but some of them are a lot harder to get my hands on than others. But this one is a novel, and it was something that I was easy to pick up. So I'm really hoping that it talks about the sculptures and stuff that I learned about during the Renaissance, but I don't really care. Art is art, and I love every minute of it, so I am looking forward to this book. So those are some recommendations, and that is a bit of my journey to blacksmithing. I hope that you enjoyed it. I will do something similar for sumo as soon as I read that sumo book that I was talking about, because I've already done some studying and stuff for Japanese stuff, so maybe I can do a bit of either martial arts in general or a bit of the culture and stuff surrounding sumo. And just like that, I plan to, once I talk about sumo and how I got into it, then I will pair that with a few videos that I took during practice and stuff prior to when I broke my arm and couldn't do it anymore. So I intend to go back. I once again waited until summer was over because of all the heat, and I just didn't want to deal with any of that. So now that all that's done, I'm hoping to get back to it, and hopefully I can get some more footage and re-fall in love with it, because as soon as I started it, my first day of doing like a exhibition of it and just learning about it, I was already blown away and fascinated. So I'm hoping to share that with you soon, and hoping that you are enjoying these videos as much as I'm enjoying making them, because outside of reading, these are my two biggest passions. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.